Hi, I'm Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive, the Knitting Psychology podcast. Cheerfully and somewhat irregularly in business since 2008. Segments today may include what's on my hooks, needles, and spindles, a strategy, something I really like, put a lid on it, oh shoot, and blather. So sit back, put your feet up, pick up your knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, or dyeing, or any other yarny thing you're doing, and get ready to enjoy. Well, hello there. It's Dr. Gemma. Happy Sunday. It is 5:34 p.m. on April 24th, 2022, as I record this. And the good news, our group on Ravelry, it seems to be currently publishing the episodes in their entirety again, but we've got at least two, I think, that got chopped up, and I still haven't been able to fix them no matter how hard I try. So I'm just going to skip ahead and say warm thanks to all you listeners for putting up with this. And also, I have to say this, as COVID numbers are beginning to rise again, and now one of my heroes, Stephen Colbert, has reported he's positive. I just want to thank all the people still wearing masks. There's a lot of us out there. And you can select by going to the right stores at the right time. So every time I go to Starbucks, nobody's masked except the employees. But when I go to a bookstore, they're all masked. Kind of tells you something about literate people. Like, we have brains. I'm just saying. Coffee drinkers, well, I'm in that subset too, and some of us, well, not so good. Anyway, if you're still wearing a mask, I want to thank you on behalf of my patients who are getting chemo or radiation or are under the age of 5 and really didn't deserve to get COVID. And it's not their fault. They're compromised in some way. So thank you. And you bet your butt I'm not getting on an airplane. Not until those masks go back on. Good for you, federal justice. I hope you don't mind all the deaths. And I guess if you believe you're following the law, you believe you're following the law, which is what we hired you to do. But really, it might have been a better idea just to keep your mouth shut. Or maybe this will force the passage of a law. Who knows? Okay, I am done griping. What is on my hooks and needles? You all know. You all know. That don't know yet? I don't know where we are in blocks, but I'm cranking through a block a day. And of course, July 19th is our next big landmark. That will be 200 blocks. Currently, I think I'm 3 blocks ahead of the count. But July 19th, good enough. I have not worked on the heart scarf or on my embroidery recently. I am struggling with the urge to buy an embroidery sampler as I look at the various samplers on my walls from the 1980s. Just because they are, but I'm also struggling with the urge to invent my own with a more traditional distal fink type of pattern, Pennsylvania German sort of thing. Twin faces brick. Oh, there's such joy in Mudville. No, we're not done it, but the neckline is on it. The body is finished. I just need to do the sleeves. She is being twin faced. She's got other things on her mind, and she's got quite a few other things on her mind. I can't really blame her. So I'm not going to get sleeve measurements from her for a while. I realize I'm 5'5", she's 6'1". I can probably do my own arms and add an inch and be there. I really doubt she's got much longer arms than me because I'm practically a gorilla. I inherited that side of the family's wide shoulders, long arms, short body. Yay! Forget that traditional hourglass figure, girls. I've got a gorilla. In the meantime, I haven't done the arms yet, and I'm looking at the 4 skeins of beautiful denim blue from Rios that's going to be her next vest for our mutual birthday in September. So that's all feeling great and under control, which, speaking of loss of control, well, first of all, Onyx yarn, I was saying last week I had ordered another 2 skeins of the bulky in the colorway Coffee Grounds, And those are now in the mail. And I have to say, too, I felt a little bad because I was whinging a bit about that last week. So I went to Onyx's website, and she's restocked all the coffee grounds except the bulky. Ah! Look, man, she's in the middle of show season, and we've gone without shows for 2 years. Bless her. No complaints here. But also, I actually had a good time exploring her site. If you haven't been there, Onyx Fiber Arts, fantastic, just so beautiful. My one regret on her online site, she doesn't have currently gift certificates, which I really regret, because to get my last 2 skeins of the coffee grounds, when I have cash, I would have liked to have bought another $30 gift certificate so that I can order with that gift certificate plus cash to get those other 2 skeins. In other words, as long as she doesn't have the bulky in stock, I would just buy a gift certificate and wait. This doesn't really matter. I mean, come on, let's be real. I can take $30, put it between the mattress and the box spring. That's just as effective as a gift certificate, okay? Let's be real. It's just a thing I do. But I did enjoy her website. It's just beautiful yarns. There's so many colors I'd love to make sweaters out of. I can, like Myra, especially, Maira. It's so pretty. It's a grayish background with speckles. It's really my colors. Anyway, there's a lot of things I'd love to do with her yarns, but right now I went through her website and had a sort of reality check because she has pictures of her studio. Honest to God, how that woman cranks out so much yarn. I mean, it's a great studio. It's beautifully organized and all that, but it really made me realize that, indie dyers are often working as she is out of their basement, and they've really got to work at establishing a studio that's equipped the way they need it to be, including machines like washing machines and plumbing and sinks. It really makes me remember looking at her website how hard it is to do the indie dyer thing. So again, I always vary because there's a part of me that resents all the indie dyers' prices, and then part of me that says, yeah, well, to set up that arrangement so they can work effectively, seriously, we're lucky they're as inexpensive as they are. But the moral of that story is they are a rare treat for me, that I can only dip into that well occasionally, but I am very excited about getting a bulky weight sweater in the coffee grounds colorway from Onyx Fiber Arts, because I think she's, I don't know if it's Fiber Studios. I'll see if I can put a link in the show notes. But her colors are amazing, and it's well worth the money. And, if you're going to order in the spring, you do have to live with Maryland Sheep and Wool is coming up. They just did a Fiber Fest that I think was it the XRX people, Stitches? They did in Loveland, Colorado. I mean, everybody's on the road. And frankly, that's great. That's great. If my worst problem is I have to wait a little because an indie dyer who makes spectacular yarns is plying her trade, traveling around the country in this spring show season, if I have to wait a little bit to get what I need or want, big deal. You know how this stuff is amazing. I feel so lucky to get it. And yes, Lisa Souza, I know you're not listening, but I'm talking to you too. And actually, all the people I love. Oink, I'm talking to you. Rock and String, I'm talking to you. Laser Sheep, I'm talking to you. I feel so Italian. Okay. And I know I'm forgetting people. Forgive me! Forgive me if I've forgotten you. All right. So meanwhile, I'm really happy because my next 2 skeins of the bulky are on their way. And I just figure at some point when I get bored, I'm going to pull out those size 10s and start making the Agnes sweater and use up the 4 skeins and just hang out till the next 2 skeins come home to me. Either that, or I'm going to use them to make a vest, which I don't know about making a vest in bulky weight. I don't know if I feel that good about that, or about using this special yarn. I really had a vision of this with sleeves, so we'll see. But I am looking forward to it. So you ask, but Gemma, didn't you go crazy last week and start knitting this crazy sweater out of crazy handspun? Yes, I crazy did. The ferrule, I am on the ribbing at the bottom of the body. The sleeves are about 2/3 of the way down, although you can't tell from the picture. It's breathtakingly beautiful, I'm just going to say. No fade pattern. I just went for dead-on stripes, When I finished one skein, I started the next, because trying to make this fade would be hard to do because some of the skeins were variegated and self-striping all on their own. So you can just forget trying to fade it, and I just am crazy about it. I did put the neckline on it as well, so we really are getting close on this one. It gives me a sense of happiness I can hardly describe. I'm not quite sure if I have enough yarn to do the sleeves. It's going to be pretty exciting to find out. In the meantime, the ferrule led me to look at my hand-spun stash. And the interesting thing there was, now that I've pulled all the purples and pinks out to make the ferrule, my stash is basically falling into two color lots, blues and kind of natural through brown and cream. So it's exciting because I already can see the shape of those sweaters forming. This has been an absolute blast. Jasmine Knitmore commented, she said, well, you're talking about the hand-spun self-hatred stuff, but she said, it is that sense of wonder that even though you're good, you still are shocked that you can take your materials and make something this beautiful. I think that's true if you're Jasmine. I mean, in other words, if you're that experienced, Jasmine's highly experienced compared to me. Although I got to admit, I've been knitting now for, about 17 or 18 years, so I'm probably more experienced than I think. Spinning, I'm not sure when I started that, but easily 10 years. Oh, easily, yeah, let me think. But more like about 14 years, but about 10 years ago, I was learning to wheel right. I was learning to work on the wheels and do repairs and learning how wheels work and how to put them together and how to restore them. And then I went back to actually spinning because I was so lousy when I started spinning. I was absolutely terrible at it. And I've been doing it a long time, but I don't feel like I've done them with a lot of support or classes or dedication. I really have played with it. Whereas I think, there are big league spinners like Joy Lynn out in New England who just scored an insanely beautiful antique spinning wheel. And, the Knitmores, where they've really been dedicated to it for years, taking classes, blah, blah, blah. I can't be bothered. The one thing I've learned about handcrafts is I absolutely hate classes. And I'm sort of ashamed of that, considering how much I love education in every other respect. But I guess crafting is where I go, feral. So yeah, I think it's true. I think Jasmine's point is a good one, that a lot of people, even though they believe they're good at their skills, they're still a little shocked at what they get when they put all their beautiful stuff together. From my perspective, I'm coming out of the hand-spun hate school that I spin it, I love it, I put it in a bin, but I give up on it. I sort of go, oh, it's so beautiful, too bad I can't think of anything to do with it. And finally taking it and saying, you're going in a sweater, whether I have to double you, which I've certainly done that on the color I'm doing now, and the color right before it. The color right before it is a reddish brown violet, and I had a huge amount of it, and it was sport weight. So I wound it into a cake, and then I wound the beginning against the end, and still have a huge amount of it. It's amazing. And then I have this beautiful purple that I'm doing for the ribbing, and again, it was too thin, and so I doubled it. So we're going to see. I'm now playing yarn chicken a little bit, but I'm not too worried about it. I'm really not. I'll be happy to rip back sleeves if I have to. But it's just so beautiful. And there's always going to be that sense of alchemy, like I can't believe I'm turning straw into gold here. But also there's just a sense I've never seen myself as a really competent knitter and a really competent spinner. And apparently I am. And it's really fun to just play wild card, to just go roaming through your stash and clear out all this stuff. And this is old stash. This is easily 10 years old. Most of it is more like 12 or 13 years, which blows my mind that they're that old. I remember spinning them like it was yesterday. At any rate, the ferrule is cranking right along. And I have some of that beautiful red violet, deep red violet, maroon as one friend called it. That's going to be the ribbed on the cuffs. And then I've still got some of the brown purple and the straight up violet that I'm working in now to do the arms as well. So we will see how that all comes out. In the meantime, let's hop down. I'm going to hop down actually to put a lid on it. One of the things I dearly love is Thai peanut salad, and I happened on a recipe for the peanut sauce. Now, it is not keto friendly because it's got maple syrup in it, which just takes it right out of my league. But the recipe is there, and one of these days I do believe I'm going to try and replace that maple syrup with brown sugar swerve dissolved in warm water or cream. In the meantime, it uses peanut butter. Peanut butter, not particularly a keto thing, but a lot of people on keto cheat and eat it. I think you could use almond butter just as well in it. But I wanted to get that in there before I go into the strategy because I think the boys are coming home and I'm going to get interrupted. Okay, let's return to the emotional management strategies. And in that light, we're looking at skills based on acceptance and commitment therapy. And of course, there's the 6 basic categories. And we have looked at the self in context versus the self as rigid. We've looked at thought diffusion, that is not defining yourself by your thoughts, as compared to cognitive fusion, where you say, I am bad and you are forever bad, and it taints every action. We have looked at staying in the present versus dwelling in a negative past or predicting a frightening future. And we've looked at acceptance, radical acceptance really, versus experiential avoidance. I accept who and what I am, I accept things as they are, and I work with them versus I'm in denial all the time. So that leaves us 2 more. You can do them in any order, but I'm going to go to values. Because one thing that happens when you look at this hexagram, it's very easy to say we're into some kind of moral and emotional relativism. So I'm in context, so I don't have to have any ongoing thing. I just move from context to context. And I'm living in the present, so I don't learn anything from the past. That would be a serious misreading of ACT. Fortunately, Steve Hayes knows that. And the thing enshrined in ACT to prevent you from doing that is the 5th angle here is values. So if you're living in context, like I might be in a dangerous situation where I might do things I would normally not do, that sort of thing. How do you decide what to do? If you're only living in the now, how do you decide what to do? Well, the point is you do use what you've learned from the past in forming your values. And so a person living in the now, who understands they're in context, doing what is necessary in this moment, makes their decisions based on a set of values that they form over time. Mind you, these are not always good things. That in Hayes's model, he says the opposite of value is lack of direction. I would agree with that, but there's also bad values or incorrect or selfish values. I would use Vladimir Putin right now as the example of that. Putin has values. They're very cynical. They're based on having been KGB. He just believes you take what you can get. And you do what you need to do to make yourself the biggest, baddest guy in town. He's not worried about the poor suffering. He's not worried about kids needing medical care. He's not worried about any of that. Okay, so Putin has values. They're just lousy. And when we talk about values, we're talking about psychological flexibility, as we always are with ACT. But the values are the thing that guide the flexibility. I was raised mostly on the Italian side of the family with strong family values, extended family values. We all take care of each other types of values. And when you don't know what to do, those values guide you. And so, I'd say on my mother's side, it was more the Pennsylvania German stuff, that we were crafty, that we believed in big families and the family supports each other. And the Italian side was, everybody knows everything about everybody. We're very chatty and communicative, and we're very warm and loving, and we turn to extended family in times of trouble. So those are sort of the basic values, and, whatever you want to believe I learned from that 12 years of religious class is okay. I'm not going to go too deeply into that because that'll stir some people up for reasons I don't understand. But anyway, that's where my values got formed. And sometimes you form your values by learning what not to do. So if you encounter somebody who's mean, you can also learn by negative example to be positive. However, that involves creativity. If you're being good to me and I like you and I know you're being good to me, I'll do what you're doing. That's pretty easy. You're modeling good behavior. But if you're being mean to me, I will be learning not to do what you do, but I may not know what to do instead. Okay, and that's where you get problems in the values. And so we really want to surround our loved ones with good values, strength, love, support, etc. But it's your values that you form, and values are formed over a process of time, and they are going to affect how you make decisions related to the rest of the ACT skills. So again, I'm a self in context, so if I don't know what to do in a situation, I hark back to my values. Now, I was raised in a very strong family, and so when I don't know what to do, I often think, well, what would my father tell me to do? Or what would my paternal grandmother, who was a big influence in my life, wonderful woman, what would grandmom tell me to do? So sometimes I can really name it. I can say, I don't really know what to do, so I'm going to use role models. I'm going to use positive examples. I'm going to use things I've seen. And often that goes on in therapy. When you're trying to explain to a patient what their options are, sometimes I use narrative therapy all the time. So instead of telling them about them, I might say, once upon a time, this thing happened. And it's a symbolic thing because you can often reach the symbolic mind. But you tell a story about values to help the patient kind of intuitively understand what you're suggesting. So you're going to run into the values issue. If you're doing good psychotherapy, patient or therapist, you're going to run into this one a lot, okay? But the idea is these other points of the hexagon can sound very relativistic. And it's important to realize they are not. They are guided by your values. And forming good values is a moral responsibility of all humans, I would argue. And so when in doubt, you're going to turn to your values. And again, I'm going to use Putin. He's easy. He's clearly getting his butt kicked in the Ukraine. Sure, he's probably going to be able to overwhelm it at some point. But now he's unified all of Europe against him. And the Ukrainians aren't going to go down easy. And he's humiliated in front of just about everybody in the world at this point. Okay? So what does he do? He doesn't have any values that guide him in this scenario. He really thought this was a no-brainer that he could just roll over the Ukraine. The answer is he can't. So without core values that tell him how to negotiate loss, he's thrashing around. And so the rest of us are kind of guessing what he'll do next. And which isn't comfortable, I grant you. But the idea is it's a really nice moment of values can fail you. You have to form those babies carefully. So the fifth ACT skill is values. And the values, in terms of Hayes research, values are defined, I guess the best way to put it is, it's the overall drives, the overall goals in your life that are motivating you. So when I was a college professor, I wasn't satisfied as a college professor. And I realized I really wanted to help people. And I thought being a college professor as a feminist was a good idea because, believe me, there's a huge amount of sexism in the university when I went through. But I didn't feel quite satisfied. And I began to realize that it was because I was seeing domestic violence in my classrooms. And it occurred to me that one of my values was really to change lives a little more dramatically than a college professor does. And I realized there were a lot of people who could go out and do what I was doing to teach Shakespeare. But I became concerned when I saw the amount of domestic violence around me that there weren't enough people committed to that. And so that's how I ended up on the road to being a psychologist, that I had a value that I felt my life would be meaningful if it was committed to the service of other people. And the college professor thing was wonderful, really wonderful. And college professors certainly serve other people, but it wasn't the form I was looking for. I don't mean to take a cheap slap at college professors, believe me. So again, your values determine when you don't know what to do, you go back to your values and you question, how am I working my values? Is this what I intended to have happen? Okay. So let's get into the fluffy books. Jasper Fforde. F as in Frank, F as in Frank. Yes, 2 of them in a row. He's Welsh. O-R-D as in dog, E. Jasper Fforde put out another novel, Early Riser. I think it's been out for a while, frankly. And how I fell behind on Jasper Fforde, I can't imagine. Jasper Fforde is wildly imaginative. Jasper Fforde is best known for his series about a character called Thursday Next and the companion series, the Nursery Crimes series. I can't recommend these enough. They are hilarious. You do need to buy them in print because he does visual jokes and puns in several of them. Fforde is like a modern-day Lawrence Stern for all you English majors. He just wildly explores every dimension of the language as he's using it. Early Riser is in a different category altogether. He posits a world where humans hibernate to save energy. And you think, well, what's the point of that? Well, one of the things it does is reverses body expectation. And he doesn't have to do a lot with that. He doesn't really bang you on the head with it, but it does keep emerging as a reality that the way we look at our bodies is very much based on the way we live, and that if we were living in different circumstances, we would have different bodily standards. What's really nice there is the ambiguity, because what he doesn't do, and I'm grateful, he doesn't get into but it's not healthy to be overweight or underweight. He has characters talk about that, but he kind of juggles the reality that there is a standard of beauty based on weight and health, that our standard of beauty is somewhat based on a healthy body, but not necessarily. And he simply points these things out without dwelling on them, which is wise of him, because I think these things are hard to resolve. I think it's more an issue to be conscious of than an issue that you're going to expect resolution on, because there isn't a way to resolve some of the issues around weight, that there are weights that are unhealthy, both underweight and overweight, and yet you don't want to body shame. But he simply is pointing out that these are standards that depend on many issues, one of which, but only one of which, is health. Another one is just the social sense of it. But it's a wildly original story. It's a lot of fun. It takes a lot of twists and turns. And because it's so original, you never quite know where it's going next. And that's the beauty of anything by Jasper Fforde. So I really would recommend Early Riser, as I would recommend a note that Jasper Fforde scribbles on a napkin in a restaurant. The guy is so talented. The next one up is, I just got The League of Gentlewoman Witches, which is a sequel to The Wisteria Society, which I reviewed previously. These are both by India Holton. They rely a lot on witty turn of phrase, and many people try to do that. They stick in these little one-liners. The one who springs to mind, by the way, is Gail Carriger on that. She's amazing at the one-liners. What India Holton has is she just never lets that up. That, I swear, her editing process must be just a scream, where she must go back through her first draft and go, I could make them steal a pocket watch right there. I mean, she just keeps at it. It is relentless one-liners, and yet she maintains a wonderful narrative that she believes in bold, successful women. And her storylines are always around women who are bold, successful, romantic, kind of piratical heroines, and the men who support them in this. So there's a lot of good second fiddle or sidekick males, but the woman doesn't need them. She chooses to be with them. And these novels are just fun. They're just fun. They're very much steampunk, tongue-in-cheek, pseudo-Victorian, Edwardian, more Victorian, I think, and just a lot of fun. There's not a serious social issue in these, except for the empowerment of women, but, who thinks that's serious? Anyway, okay, my sarcasm hangs out there. Meanwhile, although it's not quite a book, I started watching the anime series that began in the 1990s, Naruto, on Netflix. This was recommended by a patient, and I am not a fan of anime. And not for any particularly good reason. I've liked certain series. I loved Neon Genesis Evangelion, although the ending kind of chickened out. But up to the very end, it was an amazing series. They kind of painted themselves into a plot corner, I guess you could say. But it was really good. And Naruto is not at all in that vein. It is simply a long, episodic, heroic epic about a kid named Naruto, I forget his last name, and he is left without parents at an indeterminate age. And he develops this goal that the whole village he's living in, the village of the Hidden Leaf, which should be called the village of we don't care about our children, they just leave him alone to starve or whatever he's going to do. And he seems to be 10 or 11 years old when the series starts, living by himself. Nobody knows really where he's getting food from, but he's going to ninja school. And in the very beginning, he moves up a class level and gets put on a team with Sakura, the hopelessly teenage girl who is enamored of Sasuke, the guy who's trying to be cool by ignoring everybody else. And they all have their own problems, and they get Kakashi, the sensei who really doesn't care about anybody and fails everybody. But for no real reason that I could figure out, he actually accepts working with these three as Team 7. And off we go into the wild blue adventure. I'm in season 1. And it's got everything I hate about anime in it. And yet, I really appreciate it thematically. So I sit through episodes grinding my teeth, but I really like the themes. It can be very gory. Apparently in Japan they think it's okay for 11 and 12-year-old kids. I would think it's a little too bloody. And cheap budget, so the fights are just awful. And what's even worse, the fights go on for 4 or 5 episodes. I mean, seriously, we're in the middle of the Battle of the Bridge, which is really Kakashi and the bad guy who has terrible clothing sense and dresses in pajama bottoms, and for some reason thinks it's a good idea to have a bandage wrapped around his face below the nose. Haven't figured that one out, why that would help you in any way. Also, I can't figure out if it's not a medical bandage, that's good, because he can talk. Although how he's talking, I'm not sure without the bandage falling off. Little events like this keep me crazy as I watch Naruto, but at the same time, the values are very interesting. They're talking a lot where I am in the series, trapped on a bridge for like 3 hours of showtime at this point. But they're talking a lot about what are the values that Naruto and his team are supposed to be learning from Kakashi-san. And that's really interesting. They're talking right now about detachment and not using anger as a weapon. And of course, the bad guy's totally attached, raging and using anger all the time. And his boss, the big old gangster, he's even worse. And they keep showing how the characters can't quite do that, how they're too attached, and how the sensei, Kakashi, just doesn't seem to have that problem. Although how he got to that wonderful place, we don't know yet. It's too early in the series. I think I'm 12 or so episodes into it. Oh, it's endless. Because there's about 5 minutes of content, and the rest of it you're just slogging. However, when they do content, it is worth paying attention to. For example, the title character, Naruto, instead of wanting revenge on his village, which is, by the way, exactly what the villain wants on his village, instead of getting everybody back, instead of using hate, his goal is success. He says, I will be so good at being a high-level ninja that I will become the head man of the village, and then everybody will respect me. The interesting thing about that is Naruto skips over anger, that he knows what it is that hurts him. And it's emotional, not conditional. In other words, it's not the condition of being an orphan and that nobody is coming to his house with food, which I still haven't figured out how he's getting fed or where he's getting clothing from. Horrible clothing. He's running around in a tracksuit. He looks like he must be roasting all the time. At any rate, he doesn't worry about all that. what he feels is the emotional burden that nobody cares for me enough to even help me, except his first sensei in the series, who I'm sure comes back because they all do. It's like an endless Marvel universe, But he says, he doesn't say, you're all abusing me and I'm going to punish you. He says, you all simply don't see me. You do not care enough about me. So I will succeed so much that you will become focused on me. I will be your head man. It is a very Buddhist way to look at it. He's got complete detachment. And they keep showing you over and over how people fail to have detachment in the series. At the same time, Kakashi Sensei is really interesting because he tries to be laid back and calm, which I don't think he is. And he's often used to show detachment versus disinterest, or detachment versus rage, or detachment versus revenge. So the values of the series are interesting. It's an interesting way to be able to talk to different teenagers I run into. Apparently all the rest of you knew about this series. I mean, there's like 300 episodes. And somehow I am the last person on the planet to have discovered it. And I may be the last person to get through season 1 because it is so grindingly tedious through most of the episodes. But it is worthwhile to see the characterizations. It is worthwhile for those 5 minutes of characterization. They're really good. Now, it involves all the things I don't like about anime. In many ways, it reads like an 11-year-old boy wrote it. Like the writer is emotionally and sexually immature. The writer is living in this boy's paradise. It's like a weird Spin and Marty show from the Disney Channel in the 1950s, from the Mickey Mouse Club, except instead of horses, violence, knives, But it is an interesting series, and it is worth hanging in to see what they're trying to say underneath all the bad boy violence. Of course, the understanding of women. Teenage girls teenage girls are scholars in the class, useless in every other way, and addicted to boys so much so that they can't think and they're idiots. But in every other way, they're smart, except they can't fight. But that's okay. Put them in the background and use them as filler or exposition. That's what they always do with Sakura. Apparently, she gets better as the series goes on. She certainly can't get much worse, so that would be good. The other female characters are basically the loyal, loving, devoted, selfless wife and mother. There ain't nobody else if you're a girl in this series so far. So, not so much, The characters themselves, I have no idea who they're meant to be. I have no idea if they're meant to be Asian, white. I don't think there's been anybody who I'd look at and say you're of African descent. That's about as far as I can go. I'm not quite sure what they're representing there or if they're even concerned about that. It was made in the 90s. But it's interesting. The wardrobe choice is pretty idiotic. The only person who's wearing reasonable wardrobe, strangely, is Sakura. That if I could walk around dressed like she's dressed in the show, I'd do it every day. Why? She's wearing a tunic and tights. Way to go, Sakura. You're not as stupid as the writers are trying to make you. Everybody else, bandages around your mouth, a scarf over your eye, which actually works quite well as a weapon, but you cover it for a reason nobody knows, because now you've only got one eye. Kid in a tracksuit with a heavy towel around his neck. I don't know where they're getting these clothing choices. But anyway, Naruto, I actually would recommend it. It is on Netflix. It's on Amazon Prime, the adult version when he grows up. Naruto Shippuden, I think it's called. That you can buy by the episode. Don't too expensive, but I think you can buy the series for $20. I don't know if I'll ever be that into it. I think I'm kind of getting its message. I don't know if it can sustain the message for 300 episodes. I can see why teenage boys would like it. The embarrassing moment where you find out Naruto can pretend, as one of his special jutsu tricks, he can pretend he's a sexy naked girl. Again, this is not something I find particularly valuable, and I don't want my kid watching it either while we're on that subject, particularly at 11 years old. Nonetheless, when you get past all the hogwash, there's a good set of values and interesting storyline underneath it. Something I really like, well, I watched the movie Onward, finally. Disney Pixar. I hated it. Oh, God, I hated it. And then I loved it. Disney Pixar is doing a lot of that lately. Where I watched Luca, same thing. Halfway through it, it's like suddenly, oh, you know what, this is actually good. I liked Onward because now, looking back at the whole thing, it's about teenage boys. It looks like it's geared to teenage girls. It's not. Like you think, oh, they're elves, how cute. No, they do better. And it is about, at its core, how the past informs the present. And I can't give you the spoilers. The big spoiler is just right out of left field, and it happens early in the movie. I mean, you don't see it coming, what they're going to be doing in this movie. The ads do not give you the whole picture there, quite literally. But it's very thoughtful, and it's intelligent, and it's really about the value of the now, the value of your history. If I were looking at it in terms of ACT therapy, I would say it's about self in context. It's about the value of the now. It's about having your own values and having an awareness of how you formed your values. At the very bottom, it's about gratitude and courage. It's about how using your values makes you realize what you're willing to fight for, and also about what the value is of your present moment. I don't know how to say it. The only way I can describe it is about the magic of the everyday and the values that we should not dispose of just because they seem a bit old or outdistanced. And it's too deep to go any further than that. But I do recommend the movie Onward. And I think you have to hold on to about the part where the manticore cries, if that makes any sense, where the manticore talks about self-denial and lying and self-deception. It's really not what I thought it would be, and it's really quite delightful. And it's about embracing your whole life, not just the parts you like. And I can keep burbling and get nowhere. On to the blather. Eleanor went to the vet, and they gave her meds for incontinence after testing her for UTI, and she's doing fine, but she's getting her teeth cleaned in early May, and she really needs it. She's not eating a lot, and she seems hungry. So we're sort of trying to make it to May. Once we started giving her the meds for the incontinence, number one, the incontinence cleared up in 48 hours. Number two, her mood really improved. She didn't like it. So she is on her way, and that's our pup date. That, we're just trying to get Eleanor through a tough time. We don't think her life is in danger. She's just not at her happiest right now. So everybody cross your fingers that we can solve the dental and the food thing. Those of you who watched my front porch series, the porch swing series, during the quarantine, I did a lot of videos, and they're probably still somewhere on Instagram. I don't know if they get rid of them. And I did a lot of videos from the porch swing because it was just a way of getting through it. And of course, being the crazy animist I am, well, maybe I'm not an actual animist, but I named all the plants. And we had Lizard Boyfriend, who was a local lizard who kept dropping by. Lizard Boyfriend, I admit, may have been Lizard Girlfriend because she got suspiciously fat at points. But she kept flirting with me in that lizard way where they do push-ups in front of you. At any rate, yes, Lizard Boyfriend is back. We have seen Lizard Boyfriend a few times already this spring. And the plants, well, for those of you who remember, there was Nathaniel the Hawthorn, alas. Nathaniel was here when we bought the house in 2001. He did great until this winter when he suddenly dropped dead. So alas, Nathaniel the Hawthorn, the beloved blockade to getting to my front door, is now gone. Very sad. His little stump is in one of the pictures. However, there are some happier stories. Number one, we had a climbing jasmine tied to a trellis. Well, turns out the jasmine just ate the trellis. So now we have a jasmine bush on the ground. There is the jasmine bush in full bloom, and she is scenting our house. And then there were the spearmints. The spearmints, in about 2015, I had a wonderful Paiute patient. And I was complaining once about how I couldn't make herbs grow. She shows up with 4 spearmint plants, and I said, "Oh, how kind of you. But see, you can't make it grow." And she looks at me and she goes, "Look, these are native people's spearmint. Just take it." I took it. Well, those 4 plants, now I've got basically a small hedge of spearmint. It's got to be at least 4 feet wide. And it's happily choking to death all the plants we wanted to kill that we haven't been able to uproot or get out of that bed. Spearmint's doing it. So the spearmint has expanded itself up to the bare patch where we took out Nathaniel. So we are hoping this year, we're having rain too. We had a great poppy bloom. I mean, it's been an amazing year. And they're still getting snow in the mountains. Mammoth is still covered in snow. And so we're hoping that the wonderful Paiute spearmint, it's just spearmint, but it's a gift to the Paiute, and I'm so grateful for it. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. We're hoping it just takes over that whole bed. If you're going to get invaded by a weed, I say get invaded by spearmint. Makes great tea. The locust, we have Chinese locust trees. It was one tree, but it reseeded right next to itself. So the locusts are blooming, and the pictures of their blooms are there. Finally, Minerva gets the last word. Well, this is the 4th anniversary of the loss of our beloved cat Fearless and the coming of our beloved cat Minerva. So in memory of that, I have a picture of Fearless among the drop spindles, just staring down at them. And this was a meme I used to advertise when I mounted a new episode of this podcast. So there it is, Fearless gazing down upon her kingdom of beautiful drop spindles. And Minerva's giving the last word to Fearless out of love and gratitude. So there we go, kids. Another episode. I seem to have fixed the problem, as I think I said, on the group on Ravelry. We seem to be able to get these things mounted in their entirety. So hopefully that will work. Otherwise, you can always get the show notes at cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com. Here in LA County, COVID is on the rise again, but it's not serious yet. Some of us are back in our masks. I never really stopped, to be honest. We went out today. We did see a movie today, which I'll review next week, The Secrets of Dumbledore. And we went to sort of a late lunch at a restaurant. And it was interesting. They have now spit barriers between booths. Waiters are wearing masks. You know, we're in this kind of between world here in cognitive land about COVID. So, you know what I'm going to say? Please use your sense. Please use your brain. When in doubt, mask up, okay? Please remember, wear your mask, get your shots, wash your hands, stay physically distant as much as you can reasonably. Stay in touch with your loved ones any way you can, including Zoom and Skype and Teams and all the others, because the whole point of the exercise is to stay safe, to take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. So we have come to the end of another episode of Cognitive. Please do not use this podcast to diagnose yourself. If you think you are having a mental health problem, please contact a licensed mental health professional. Show notes for these episodes can be found at cognitivepodcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. Episodes can be found at iTunes under the name Cognitive Podcast, but also can be found posted next to the show notes on the Blogspot page. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody, stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.